According to board policy, this announcement is to advise all attendees today's board meeting is being recorded. Persons wishing to address the board on any agenda or non-agendized item must fill out a speaker card. We do have 11 speaker cards. That reduces our time to 2 minutes per card. We will now conduct the Pledge of Allegiance once again. Joe, you will please lead us.
Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board, we have on the agenda. We have a motion to adopt.
Motion.
Motion by Joe.
Second.
Second by Juliana. Please vote. Has everybody voted? Yes.
Okay. See it on the screen.
Passes 5-0. Next, we come into public participation. Folks, when I call your name out, we're going to have the first person sit at the table, then I'm going to call out at least 3 or more after that. If the next people will please stand in order behind them, that would be appreciated, and then we'll go through the routine again until we're completed with the cards, okay? If Ms. Stacy Hoover will please take the first seat, followed by Priscilla Schreiber, followed by Scott Ludwig, and then followed by Angie Asaro, please.
Right behind her.
Yeah, let's line up.
Can't see.
Okay. Are you ready? As soon as you see the time go up on the screen, make sure the microphone is pulled all the way to your mouth so that the audience can hear. Ready? Go.
Yes, I'd like to state that it's a very sad and unfortunate situation that what has happened has happened. But now that we know that this $60,000 is available, I'd like for it to be put towards special education. I have a grandson that attends Boston Elementary, who gets 0 attention, and he has an IEP. So we have that kind of money to spend, that's what I would like to do. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Thank you.
Priscilla.
Okay. Are you ready, Crystal?
I am, thank you.
Okay, ready.
Good afternoon, board members, honorable board members, and superintendent. I come here before you today because of what happened at the last meeting when you voted on a contract. And my concern for you is that when you bring back an action item that was a consent agenda with 16 items in it, would you not bring that whole item back to void it and vote if you needed to pull one item, the one in question, vote on the 15? It doesn't change anything, it's a formality. And I think it is doing the public's business in public when you do that. If you vote on the contract that you have today, I'm not sure if it's the same one that is in place that you've already previously voted on, but now you have 2 open-ended contracts. I don't think there was enough information like you were, so I think Dan could probably address that. I don't know the process of how you do that. But I would think you would void a contract and start over with a new contract, and you'd have to bring that whole one action item back in order to do that. So that's a question for the board to consider. I hope this board comes together because I think you guys are great people and concentrate on the special talents that each one of you bring forward. And be as transparent as you can, especially when you have 2 new board members that are just learning their way. And I know, I know politics just about as much as anyone and how that goes down. And I've learned a lot through reflection on that. So I would hope that fair play is always at the forefront of what you do, and that you always work not just to the board majority, but for the whole board, for the benefit for them to always know what's going on. Because it's real easy to shoot in the dark and be blinded if you don't have all the information. Some other board members have it all. So I would just encourage you. I love this board. I love what Cajon Valley does. We have a great relationship on the board that I'm with, and we have a long history together. So I just hope that you guys will work together. But I would ask that question cause I don't know how you have this, when it was asked by, remember Carnival?
Time.
To bring that back, and it wasn't brought back in a way he could vote. Thank you.
Mr. Loveland?
Okay, you ready?
Yeah, go ahead. My main focus on this is the fact that this is something with new information that came to light. You guys have policies and procedures that you're supposed to follow. And when I did some quick research online, looking up the individual and their business, it says it was established in 23, yet this board voted on something in 22 that this person owns. So the other issue that I had too is finding out information about what this is providing for our children and everyone else's children and students for Cajon Valley. There's not enough information that I'm aware of to the public to find out what this company is doing. And, you know, the gentleman that spoke earlier, the attorney, was talking about the weeds. The weeds are the important part. You don't get the weeds out of the garden doesn't grow. You know, he makes it sound like the weeds are not, they don't matter, but they do. The weeds are the important part, because if you don't pick them, nothing grows. And I want to see Cajon Valley grow. I'm sure you know this. I was a student with Cajon Valley. Now I'm a parent. I just want to see things better than they are now, and sometimes what they were when I was a child. That's just the hard part of it. And if you guys don't want to do the weeding, then maybe representing us isn't something that you need to do. That's just how I feel about it. So it's my first time to a board meeting, and it was very enlightening listening to the attorney talk about the different aspects and things that have to go into understanding the law of what goes on here. I just felt like when he was saying dive into the weeds are the important parts. Because that's where all the information is. You can make bullet points all day long, but if you don't read all the subcategories, you're not fully informed. And I just want to be fully informed about what this company is providing for $60,000 a year. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sorrow. And before you start, please, we will line up, if you will, folks. Andrea Amaro. Shari Finn. And David Burke, please.
Okay, ready, Anthony?
All right, good afternoon. I just want to thank Anthony for bringing this to my attention. I was unable to make the board meeting with this old Tamara situation. As a CVUSD employee for 20 years and a mom of a student in the district, I would love to be making $10,000 a month. I feel I put in the time and the work to be paid that if Tamara can get it. I've worked at 4 different schools in this district over the past 20 years. I have not once seen Tamara's face on campus at any 4 of those schools that I was at. If she has made this much of an impact on the school and you guys want to continue to be paying her this, I want to see it. I've seen nothing from her to be getting this much pay. If Tamara supposedly did so much when she was on the board, why aren't the new board members and old board members stepping up and doing what Tamara did? Is Tamara irreplaceable? Are there new and old board members not capable of doing what Tamara is doing in the same work? Jim, you're an attorney. You have to know the situation is wrong on many levels, and this situation should be terminated by the end of this meeting today. Mr. Miyashiro, I respect you. I feel that if you want continued support of us employees and the families, you also need to do what's right and have this contract, whatever this contract is, terminated. I don't, as a parent and employee, even understand what this contract is for. Is she getting paid for things that we already have in place in our district, World of Work, TEDx? We have people running that. Why would we be paying somebody else to be doing that? She has made no impact on my child's life, being in this district, or my own. Having her be paid this is absolutely ridiculous and a slap in the face. We the people voted her out. That right there should speak volumes and her not being wanted or needed in our district anymore.
Andrea?
Okay, go ahead.
Hello, I'd like to read a Facebook quote from Tamara Otero on September 16, 2022. Our students and families deserve trusted leadership. She is absolutely right, and that is exactly why she did not win her election. For the board to even consider a contract with Tamara Otero, especially without looking into outside vendors, is absolutely ridiculous. The Otero family is filled with corruption, including her guilty of defrauding the federal government. She is just following in his corrupt footsteps by violating conflict of interest bylaw 9270 as acting president, and the code is extremely clear. Board members shall not be financially interested in any contract made by the board on behalf of the district. And yet this board has already awarded her $10,000, even though she clearly violated this bylaw as president of the board. And Tamara Otero is aware of this conflict of interest bylaw, as she was already called out for violating this code in 2019 when her son received a $600,000 bid. Paying Alphabet Soup $70 an hour is insulting. Alphabet Soup did not even exist 2 months ago, much less be qualified to gain a contract at this price. Life-changing teachers do not make $70 an hour. Astounding principals do not make $70 an hour. And Tamara Otero is not qualified to be either a teacher or a principal. How on earth can you validate that she is worth $70 an hour? Everyday parents for my son's classroom at Bostonia are donating items from the teacher's wish list, like paper, glue, books. Why is the district not able to provide schools with basic items, but they can spend $60,000 for Alphabet Soup? That is absurd. If you as a board member vote to reward this corruption, you have lost our votes.
Ms. Peck.
Good afternoon. Okay, you ready? Sure. So both speakers before me covered a lot about what I was going to say, so I'm not going to repeat what they said. I echo their sentiments and what they have to say. I will also point out the Government Code Section 1090 prohibits an officer, employee, or agency from participating or making government contracts in which the official employee within the agency has a financial interest. I think it's blatantly clear, everybody up there knows that she had a financial interest when this was done. And the fact that it went through right before her exit and then she created her LLC right after it was awarded speaks volumes. And it doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure out that what was done was wrong. And if you guys have $60,000 to throw out into something so frivolous and something so unnecessary and illegal, then maybe you should take a little bit closer look at some of your security measures that you have going on in place right now, some of the different things that are going on with your kids, the kids that are going missing, the kids that are being trafficked. I am the founder of the RAD movement, and we are working very closely with the Grossmont Union High School District right now to address this issue. And if you have $60,000 to throw around, maybe you should look into causes like that are more of an interest to your children and your families.
David, before you start, please. We will now line up, please. Robin Johnson. Chrissy. Scott Park. And Darren Cross.
Okay, ready? Go ahead.
Hi, I'm David Burton. Most all of you know me. I've been here for probably one of the things about being my age. I've been here longer than most all of you. I'm a product of this school district. I have a lot invested. I'm a native El Cajonian, and I am a member of numerous groups throughout this state. I lead several groups in this city and this East County, and I'm here representing East County Citizens Oversight Group. And oversight is what keeps everything happy and in the light. And when there's not oversight, when everything's not happening in the light, there's problems. And that's why we're here today, working on something that doesn't follow the bylaws of this district. It was done with unethical practice when there was a conflict of interest by the board member that is in question, that is no longer here, that the people removed from her position. So I think there's no need to rush anything like this. I don't think I've never seen anything that she's going to offer that's vital to this district that we have to rush to have a vote today. And if there is, everybody who votes will have the consequences of that vote. So I hope that you guys can all work together. One of the things that you guys, as leaders, you're representatives of the citizens. It's not your seat. You're sitting there, but it's the citizens that you represent. We live in a representative republic. And in that representative republic, you're voted in to represent our interests. And if our interests aren't being represented, then there's a big question. But you're on the school board, and we want children to learn to work together. And that's what I want to see this board do. I think that we got great talent up there, but let's not squander it. Let's not rush anything. There's no need to rush today. And if there is, then we have to deal with it as citizens.
Time.
Thank you.
Hello.
Ready?
Yeah, ready. Well, I'm a lone wolf here, but my name's Robin Johnson. I'm a friend of Tamara Otero for almost 25 years. We were neighbors for 22 years. We raised our kids together, served on PTA. We've traveled, done real estate deals, and have been there for friends, as friends. I was going to come with Tamara today so she didn't have to sit here and endure this by herself. She's not here though. She was visiting family in Missouri, and her flight got canceled due to weather. I decided to come anyway to support and defend my friend. As all of you know, Tamara Otero is a person with great integrity. What she is being accused of here is simply not true. I know the story of the election, the contract, the LLC, and this defamation hearing. Anthony, you came out of nowhere to run for an important seat in a small election. You had big bucks, big endorsements, and 4 million signs. You won fair and square, good for you. Tamara sat on this board for 12 years. She learned a lot during that time. She served 3 superintendents and had a significant role in hiring David Minshiro. Many board members have come and gone during her time. It's a given with an elected position. She wasn't sure if she was even going to run again. Her kids are grown and they're out of the district, and she was thinking it was time to move on to other opportunities. But she ran again. There were programs and projects that are in place that she was aware of. So she ran and she lost. The staff, the cabinet, and some principals were worried about all the things that Tamara did that no one else even knew. So they asked if she would be a consultant to train people on FACE and TEDx to facilitate a smooth transition in the next 6 months. $60,000 was a maximum. My voice is so loud. That may be a lot of money to you if you sell coffee or wine or wrapping paper, but $75 an hour for a consultant is incredibly reasonable. 6 months to consult and help with the transition is not unreasonable. Thank you.
Your time is over.
Please do not yell out.
No comments from the gallery, please.
Thank you.
I understand the comment. Please,
Yeah.
please don't.
Thank you.
Okay. Chris?
Glad to see Tamara has one friend.
Right.
Chrissy, please get to your comment. Thank you. Ready? Go.
Yeah. I'm urging you guys not to vote for the Alphabet LLC. I think it was very clear that we did vote Tamara out and don't think that she has, the fiduciary loyalty qualities that we saw Mr. Shannon post. May not use office for gain, obviously, as Ms. Robin just said, that she used this office. Colleagues are telling her, you should get this while in office, right, in case you lose the election. That's using it for gain. Transparency was not given to the board nor to the public. Had the public known that Tamara Otero was gonna get a job here, you would have had a line just like this during that meeting. You didn't, because nobody knew that it was her. There is no trust there with Tamara Otero. That's why she overwhelmingly lost, and that's why she needs a job here. If $60,000 isn't that much to her, why doesn't she go do something else? She's betrayed the public's trust time and time again. But this time, it won't be just Tamara. It's not just her son's company, it's not just her husband going to prison. It will be the stain on the remaining board members who ever vote for this to be approved. That's where the stain will be. And that's where the trust will be lost. And I know she has 3 friends on the board, like a little bit of a voting block, so why not just do it the right way the first time? Why not just have her name out there and say, hey, yeah, like, we like her a lot, we wanna keep her around, so we're gonna vote her in. You guys know you have a little bit of a majority voting block there. So I don't understand why she would do that in the first place. And I think that the best interest of the kids in this public is to vote no on that. Thank you.
So, thank you so much for your service and the responsibility you are taking to serve our community and our kids. And as a community member, and we are here, most of us, because actually we are not happy from what we are seeing. We expect first that you work together, you follow the procedures, you follow the policies, and you make decisions as a team. And that's the reason you are here. For us, like, we want you to trust each other and work together and believe in each other, because that's the way to go. You can succeed and you can serve and you can do a good job. If you don't do that, then it's not gonna work. You have to be patient with each other. Give yourself time, especially the new one. Give yourself time. Learn from each other. And even before you go public, talk about it between you. Don't get us involved as a community. I want you to work together, fight between you before you come to us asking us for help and making public. Come on, so please, that's what we expect from you. Thank you so much.
Okay, you ready?
Yes, fine. Darren Morose. I was just thinking about everything that everybody said. I've known Tamara for about 12 years, and I'll be honest, it feels like I'm in the middle of the campaign. Most of the people here, I guarantee, didn't know who Tamara Otero was 12 months ago, and now they're trashing her reputation. Do I agree with the way it was done? Absolutely not. I think there should have been more transparency. I think, as Mr. Burton said, there's no reason to rush. The election was not some sort of referendum. You had two candidates. There was no mudslinging going on. So I would just encourage everybody on this board to work with civility. One of the greatest things a leader can do is to keep the people calm. I don't see any calm people behind me with this issue. And it's hard. It's hard being up there. I chair the planning commission. I know what it's like. I know what it's like to have the arrow shot at you. But I definitely want to emphasize what Dr. Nori said. You guys are a team. Work it out before you come and drag us in and get everybody all ginned up for no reason. There was a reason. I get it. I understand what's going on. I know that the board has learned the best way to bring things forward. And, I don't think there should be a rush on this one. But, the personal attacks, for Tamara, she worked hard. All of you, this is a thankless job. Okay, you're up here doing it. You have other jobs. You have other passions in life. You do this because you love the kids. So let's just get back to what's important, and that is the kids. That's what it's about. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
How does email, I wonder?
The next item. Recommend the governing board approve the consulting agreement with Alphabet Soup LLC. However, I'd like to inquire with Dan. Dan, can I have you come up to the speaking?
Sure.
Table, please?
Mr. President, we also have a short presentation from Mike Sermon on scope.
Oh, well, let's do that. I didn't realize that. Dan, if you'll, subside with Mike.
We thought this board might appreciate the work that staff had put together in terms of the contracts that we hope the board will approve.
So thank you, board, for allowing me to be here today and have a conversation just really quickly about the FACE department and kind of an update about who we are and the work we've done. Family Community Engagement Department is about, our mission is building relationships. And in order to build relationships, we have to have those connections with our students and our families. And that's the job, the responsibility of the FACE department. We do that to accomplish our mission of having kids in healthy relationships on a path to gainful employment. Right. There's a path, on a path to gainful employment. That's our goal. FACE department, we were founded many years ago, a few years ago, with the support of having all of our families coming from the Middle East. And when our families came from the Middle East, we needed support. In order to do that, Dr. Bashiro, Tamara, Ayala at the time, who had my position at the time, went to and fought for the money to be able to have our FACE department. And I just want to kind of ground this really quickly in the work of the FACE department. What is the role and responsibility of that? It is to be able to change from parent involvement to parent engagement, really doing with families as opposed to families. That's the whole point of the Family Community Engagement Department, is bringing families together so we can do with instead of to. And really looking around as we're thinking about that and how we look at our activities so people can understand what we do. It's about building relationships, and all the relationships we build is simply to link to learning. It's linked to the learning of our students. We've been hearing a lot today about what we want for our students. That's the job of the FACE department, is to be able to build relationships between school staff and families in order to link to learning. And being aware of the type of activities that we're working on, whether it's activities that are like potlucks, relational, or whether it's home visits, which are linked to learning. The job of the Family Engagement Department is to do both, build relationships as well as link to learning, so that we can do what's right for our students. We have a team. We have 17 community liaisons right now, and some people think the Family Community Engagement Department are these people. They're a small part of the puzzle, a big part in our hearts, but a small part of the puzzle. The responsibility of the Family Community Engagement Department is for every single one of these people to build relationships. They have a superpower of speaking other languages, as well as English. They work for all of our schools and all of our districts. They're housed in our schools where the needs highest, language-wise, and then they're able to support anywhere and everywhere. And the point of that is it's not just about these people, it's about what the FACE department is able to do by changing beliefs and mindsets so that we can support our students differently. And we have 4 goals in order to do that. Our goals start with, and the reason I'm talking about our 4 goals is to talk about the responsibility, the responsibility that each of our goals have specifically, and how we as a FACE department work within those goals. So one idea that we have is called poverty simulation. Poverty simulation is a way for us to help our staff think about poverty and what some of our students might be going through. And as we look at the poverty simulation, this is just an entry point, because I can go and give a conversation with staff all day long about family community engagement, and not many people might not listen to me because I'm just talking about a presentation, as opposed to giving them experience where they see what kids might be going through, or families might be dealing with day in and day out with poverty. The idea of the poverty simulations is the first conversation at the school, so that we're able to have a conversation later with our staff about what we might do differently when our students come into school. Everything from change, it can be as simple as when a student is welcomed into the school, they might be welcomed in with a belief that it might be a comment of like, why were you late today, which makes a student feel horrible. And constantly asking them, why were you late, what was going on, as opposed to, I'm so glad you're here. So the poverty simulation helps open our minds and ideas, and it's just the first conversation. And Tamara was huge in the development of the FACE department from the very beginning, and her historical knowledge and what she's able to bring has been able to help us continue to build our program. And as she continues to go, whatever happens here today, that her historical knowledge, her belief in the development of the FACE department, and programs like the poverty simulation will allow us that her knowledge to continue to build things. Like, for example, like we'll go in and have a conversation with the school about the poverty simulation, opens their hearts and minds, they think about it, but if we just walk away from that point, at that point that we lose all context, they forget about us. But if we continue to come back and have follow-up meetings, Tamara would be able to come in through this short time and do different opportunities like she's done before during COVID, when she had listening sessions with families, where we would have her come in and us come in and design an experience for our parents and our teachers to be able to have conversations about how to do things differently through things like the poverty simulation. We have lots of opportunities. I'm not going to explain them all. Like positive home visits is another opportunity. We have family teacher teams, which really redesigns back to school night parent-teacher conference and open house, and really gives the parents an opportunity to become a team with the teacher. In addition to programs like Parent University, which really engages our building the capacity of our parents and our families based on what they might need. We have Thrive cohorts, where we're working with our school leadership to be able to think differently, and that's where family community engagement isn't just about liaisons, it's about everything we do. That family community engagement is about every teacher, every principal, board member, parent working together and developing that relationship that we're always constantly working towards. We do things like 3-day FACE student-teacher training, where we've had the FACE department come together with San Diego State to help build a pipeline from San Diego State to Conejo Valley. One way we were working with them is helping them understand what family community engagement was before they even get here, to be able to allow those teachers to want to come here. We would, if Tamara was able to continue, we would want her to continue to work and design what that program could evolve into based on where we started. In addition to, we've had the Community Engagement Initiative, which has been, it's now $100 million. We've been a part of that since the beginning. It's an initiative from the state to spread family community engagement across the state of California. It's a grant. We were able to be a part of that. And we are working with many districts side by side to understand the concepts, some of the concepts that I briefly touched on, so that they can have those connections and relationships with their families. And the whole goal is to build those relationships with families so that we can do with together instead of to them, and just making things happen, making decisions for them. Tamara's role in this responsibility has been critical and crucial, and the conversations we've had with our other districts, she has a perspective of a board member, she has a perspective as a parent, she has a lot of knowledge that she's able to help change minds and think through things differently and allow us to move districts and schools forward. And I just want to end with this because, you know, we were all playing a big role in this, the entire district. Dr. Miyashiro bringing our families back from Afghanistan, Tamara, our board, and it's all about relationships. If it wasn't, so many people wonder, like, why did you get so involved? One, they were our families. Two, the only people that the government or the military at the time, because we were able to talk to Congressman Issa, he had a team that was able to go help get our families back. The only reason we were involved specifically is because of the relationships we have with families. When they were in Afghanistan and trying to get out, the only people that they would trust were our liaisons who had relationships with them. Nobody else. The military would say, go here, go there. They would say, the only person I'm going to listen to are your liaisons because I know them and I know their number. And they were able to communicate with the military in order to get our families back. We never would know when situations like this are going to happen. Relationships are absolutely everything. Tamara has been a big part of that. Whatever the board decides, Tamara's reputation, I do not want it to be known as this because it's been and had such a gigantic role in creating these connections between families. That's what Tamara has been about. That's what our FACE department has been about. And if we're allowed to continue to work with her, I know we'll be able to continue that mission.
Mike, in putting the contract together, the FACE department with Assistant Superintendent Minshew, a lot of the contract will be paid specifically out of the CEI grant.
There is, yeah, we do get money for all the work we do with the CEI. It comes back for the Family Community Engagement Department where we spend it on, it could be food, it could be leadership programs, or it could be contracts to support family, or to support the work to spread the message.
But to be clear, it does not go into the general fund that can be spent anywhere else.
Correct.
Mr. Serban, what is your title with the FACE department?
Director of Family Community Engagement.
Okay. So you've been directing this department now for how long?
Since 2018.
So just a little historical background on this. So the FACE, when was the FACE office actually created?
The work started in 2000, I want to say 14 or 15. And then it's been slowly growing since then and evolving since that time.
So the development process of the FACE office, I would imagine, was critical when the federal administration of the nation called El Cajon a destination for all those that were in war-torn areas of the Middle East. Is that correct?
That's 100%. That's why and I didn't get to say that at the very beginning, but that's why we got the funds initially through the county grant way back when, was because we had families in 2015 coming from Iraq who needed support, and we needed to put a team together in order to support them. It started with the FACE team, but evolved into supporting all families.
Okay, so what was the circumstances of these families that were coming into Cajon Valley?
They were refugees, many of them. Some were SIV holders where they worked for the government at the time in Iraq, working together, and then their lives were put in danger, and then they had to get out of that situation. They left their families. They came as a mother and a father and 3 kids. All their extended family would be left there, and they would then come here as a refugee in our country. And predominantly, people needed the support, like we need to communicate language, Arabic, Farsi, Pashto, Dari, Spanish, and that's why that team was initially put together. But then it's evolved into a leadership team and a team that can support all families regardless of language.
So how many students do you say were per month or per week were entering into specifically Cajon Valley at the time?
At the time, I know as a principal, at the time I was at Narenka, and I opened 3 classrooms in January. So that's one school, 90 kids. There was thousands, I think, that were coming in. I know over the course of the time, 40, 50,000 of families that have come before and after that. At the time, it was at least a few thousand.
So based on the entry of all these individual students and their families, would you say that also impacted the education of Cajon Valley?
Absolutely. We weren't able to get our job done. Dr. Miyashiro, Eyal, and Tamara went to the federal government, went to the state, and were asking for funds. Like, we can't do our job we can't support our kids, especially in January without additional funds. And that's when the county grant was put in place to be able to give the support to our families and provide them what they needed.
So as we saw the influx of these students enter into Cajon Valley, they didn't have an understanding of English language. They also were a part of other communities that had several different language bases. And how would you say that impacted our dashboard for Cajon Valley in comparison to the rest of the state?
It definitely impacted. I mean, the challenge of having kids coming in at 5th grade and taking a 5th grade test who have never been in school before, or maybe never been in school in the United States, it would have affected our test scores dramatically because of the fact that they simply didn't know the language. It's 7 years to acquire a language usually, and that's what they were.
So these refugees in a big way were bringing down the scores of the rest of the district, would you say?
Yes, it was a challenge for sure. I mean, absolutely. I mean, the scores would have been lowered because they were here and a part of our scores, but being judged against kids who've been in school for 8 years. If one was in 5th grade, one was in 5th grade from Afghanistan in the United States, it's not a fair judgment, so the scores would look lower.
So it's fair to say that with the influx of the refugees coming and the FACE office being developed just about that time, and also the recommendation of what we were able to get from Tamara with the additional grants from the federal government and the state government, is that correct? There was additional grants that Tamara actually advocated for us to help not only the refugee students entering into the schools, but to help alleviate the pressures that our district was being handed off because of the obligation of us receiving these influx of refugee students. Is that right?
Correct. That would have been various grants through various organizations that she petitioned for, Kaiser grants, the CEI grant, CalNU grant. There's other grants as well that I'm not remembering, but yeah, there's several grants that she was helping us find in order to support our families.
If you don't mind interrupting, Mike, just to clarify, maybe you might recall this better. It's fair to say that Tamara was instrumental in some of those grants, correct?
Absolutely. She was the key reason they happened.
Thank you. Go ahead.
And without those grants, how would it have affected other children?
When I think of the power that our liaisons had in building those relationships, I think it saved the lives of 26 kids by getting them out of Afghanistan. I mean, that's like a very drastic piece. As far as day to day, it's from frustration to stemming frustration when you have a community liaison that's able to communicate your language and build those connections and those relationships. It creates a community. We often say we're many cultures, but we're one community. In Oklahoma, we have many cultures here, and we honor those. But more importantly, we're one community working together. And that's the power of what she has been able to do with the Family and Engagement Department.
There's a lot of aspects as far as, when we're talking about our community as a whole. And we have to keep in mind that these students were, we were obligated to take them. There was no way out, by saying, no, we can't take these students because we don't have the room, we don't have the resource. Was there any opportunity for us to say to the federal government, no, we can't do this? We
No.
don't have the resources.
At the time, not to my knowledge, no, as a principal at the time, no, these students were coming here. We couldn't say we were gonna take them.
So we were obligated to find new ways of educating not only these incoming students, but also to help not lose the education for those who were not refugees.
To support all students, absolutely.
And then I just want to reiterate, you did say that the grant was only for the face office.
The county grant was for newcomers.
Can you spend the grants in the face office for any other project or, books, supplies? Can you spend any of that for any of the general population of Cajon Valley?
Currently, with the county grant, it's specifically for our newcomer families. Other grants that we get, like Kaiser and CEI, could be spent for all families. It depends on the grant and what the grant stipulates.
Which is our goal for Face Office.
Of course, is to support all families. All students.
Thank you, Mike.
Any other questions from the board? Mike, I have one. So, it was brought up during the public session about the cost of contract, which, again, it's not $10,000 a month, which has been repeatedly misinformation put out to the community, which is unfortunate. Math is math, although then again, I look at my daughter's high school math, and I wonder if math is still math. Nonetheless, when it comes down to doing the job, between experience, background, and influence in the job, do you know of somebody else, if you were to hire them as a direct employee to the face office, that could instantly walk in and do the job that we know Tamara can do based upon what you just demonstrated today? Is there anybody else out there right now?
I don't know anybody with the history, with the knowledge, with the experience, with the history on the board, with the history as a parent, with the understanding of our students, and more importantly, with the relationship between our principals and our teachers. She has influence, and what she says matters. She's been with us for a very long time, and however we could use her during this time would be a benefit to our students and our parents and our students.
And then, although not directly to you, I'm gonna somewhat answer my own questions. I direct it to Michelle if you have a second. Give a ballpark if you have one. Salary, benefits, creating the position. What would it cost our district to hire somebody in an employee position versus the consultancy position to do all of the things that Mike has described? Not to mention the training to get them up to speed.
Yeah, I would say right around for a 1-year contract, I've worked in 180, 200 grand.
I have no further questions of Mike. Again, do any of my questions trigger any additional questions from the board members?
Yeah, Mike, is Tamara being hired to work with students in the district?
No, she would be working with adults, us adults, yeah.
All right, thank you, Mike. You have a question, Mike? I'm just gonna bring Dan up, but you have a question right now. Okay. All right, Dan, if you could, Counselor, take the podium. Sure. So, I will first open it to the board because tradition, the president reserves questions for the end. Does the board have any questions of our council associated with anything going on with our particular special meeting today?
Mr. Shinoff, are you aware who set the agenda for the December 13th meeting?
I am not. I have no personal knowledge.
Can you speak into the microphone?
Pardon me?
Microphone, yeah.
I'm sorry, I do not have personal knowledge of it.
Anybody else? regard to the timing of how the agenda was set, which was, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, give or take December 8th? Is that correct? Right. Agenda set December 8th. We ended up having our meeting December 13th, if I remember that correctly. How does that reflect, given the agenda setting, as to the government code 1090? Have you given or espoused an opinion on that as to whether or not there's an actual conflict of interest at that point, because she did not, she being Tamara, actually vote on any contract?
The fact that she didn't vote on the contract is extremely important, okay? So then the secondary issue, of course, is, well, was she a board member at a point in time that it influenced the decision to place that agenda item on the December 15th calendar? So I think what you need to know, the most important question for me would be, when was that particular contract advanced to be placed on the agenda? So in terms of the registered voters decision, that would have been by December, certainly by December 8th, if not before that, so she wouldn't have been a board member any longer.
So as of the certification of the vote, she technically is no longer on the board.
She's absolutely no longer a member of the board. But the question again is, when was that contract added to the potential items on the consent agenda? So I think staff should be able to give you that.
Superintendent, do you answer that?
Yes, we were hoping that she would establish the LLC in time for the board meeting. Karen's office handles our ICAs and contracts. Karen, can you speak to the agenda setting?
So the contract was brought forward, the description. We were waiting for the ICA. The person that normally takes care of ICAs in our district is not in a position right now. We have a substitute doing that work. So we set the item with the description. The ICA, we normally attach them for the board. It was not attached because we did not get it returned in time. So that is, the error is my fault. It is absolutely out of someone doing the work that doesn't normally do that work. There's an executive assistant that was not in place. Someone else picked up the work. It usually flows through a clerical process of attaching an item. And the reason it was not attached was because it was not in our hands and not uploaded at agenda setting.
Okay, so
this is what causes the confusion.
So, so thanks, Karen, very much for that clarification, because if that contract was not part of the agenda setting, but then became subsequent, then it was subsequently added as an agenda item, that's an important distinction for me.
Mr. Shinoff, when do the duties of the outgoing board president end? Would that be on December 8th when the county certifies the election?
When do they cease?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say that upon the certification of, yeah.
Mr. Shinoff, we have a board bylaw 9110 BB, terms of office. It says a member whose term has expired shall continue to discharge the duties of the office until his or her successor has qualified by taking the oath of office. Government Code 1302, 1360, and Education Code 5017 are cited there.
Okay.
So when does the board president, do the board president's duties end with regard to this matter?
So the question is, when was the oath of office taken? I'm sorry, when was the oath of office taken?
December 13th, approximately 5:30 p.m. if anyone wants to correct me on that.
That's okay. So that was December 13th.
Correct.
And was Ms. Otero at the December 13th meeting?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
No, is the answer.
Okay, so to the best of everyone's recollection, when did she last attend a board meeting at the district? I know that there was some celebration celebration of her service here, when was that?
The last official meeting, not inclusive of the agenda setting, would have been November.
Okay. I think it's a board policy that needs clarification. Because if you're not officially in office, you don't have any rights. You haven't been elected, and so I think that there is a strong argument against the validity of that position. So,
That is a quote directly from Government Code 1302.
Okay.
Or bylaw mirrors, essentially.
Okay.
However, conversely, then that would in theory require the outgoing board members to initiate and start the meeting, and then only upon the oath of office being exchanged from the new members, then to step down off the dais. That would be the process. However, we've never done that.
Right.
To my knowledge, I've only been here for 6 years. Now, 3 elections, probably 2 elections. So I would agree that we should probably get some clarification on that. And I will also, before council says it, you alluded to this in the workshop. Reading law and knowing law are 2 different things for everybody to understand.
So the other thing I would say is that under the government code, there's also a requirement when people officially take office. So I think we should take a look at that as well. I know it's a Friday, so that is my memory, but it may be the first Friday of the month. So I just would like to take a look at that provision as well. But typically it is early on in December, because you also have your organizational meetings, and that I assume took place on December 13th.
Correct.
I have a question for Karen. Who would you have received the document from? You said it wasn't received in time. So she clarified.
I would have received the document from Tamara. I was waiting for her to sign the document and then it becomes just a clerical process of uploading to the item in the ICAs.
Go ahead, Joe.
Was she made aware that the contract was going to be placed on that board agenda that she just set previously? Was she aware of that?
Was she aware that it would be an item on the agenda? I think I don't recall telling her exactly what agenda it would be on. We were processing the ICAs like we do with every contract, and sometimes they'll make a deadline and sometimes they won't. I don't recall having a specific conversation that it's going to be on this agenda. The processing time, those contracts are really somewhat complicated, especially for the people that are trying to develop an independent contractor agreement when you look through the details of it. And so sometimes some of our people take a long time, they don't understand what's being asked in our language. So I don't remember a specific conversation about that with her.
Karen, a question for you. The $60,000 amount, how was that formed, preliminary discussion agreed to?
We looked at the number of weeks left in a year, and most of all of our contracts are an up to, because we can't define specifically how much work will be asked for, needed. So it's an up to contract, and we looked at the remaining weeks when the item was first brought forward for the year. And I think I started averaging at a 20 to 30 hours a week at probably a high level. I didn't anticipate this to be full-time work from that time. So it was the hourly rate of $70 an hour, and somewhere in the vicinity of 20 to 30 hours a week. And then moving forward, we determine what we need.
Okay, and then when you place an item on an agenda for a contractor with an agreed upon amount, that involves discussions with the contractor?
It does, but usually we are the customer, so cabinet is David giving influence, determining what we think that scope of work will require by hours. It's our best estimate.
But it wouldn't end up on the board's agenda unless the contractor had at least preliminarily agreed to an amount, correct? Like, you don't just choose it out of nowhere?
No.
Okay, thank
And, two questions. One, can you espouse briefly about how an LLC and or corporation or otherwise is an independent legal entity? Two, the liability of accepting or rejecting contracts based upon who may or may not own said independent, companies.
Certainly, so
That's
let
the
me,
first part.
so let me begin with the first question, because the first question is really an issue for the Secretary of State. So the Secretary of State makes those determinations based upon an application in order to be incorporated or in order to be recognized as an LLC. And that issue is really one of taxation and the ability to operate in that particular capacity. Because without that, you couldn't work in that capacity. I think that is a separate and distinct issue from the one that you're facing now. So in my mind, whether it had become an LLC or not by that particular point is not really the issue that is before you. And in terms of contract based on who it is, you want to avoid any situation where you're discriminating against anybody. And so those decisions, I believe, should be made on what's in the best interest of the district. That's it, without regard to individual affiliation. So the issue, bottom line is, what is the recommendation from the cabinet? What's the basis for the recommendation as the cabinet? And then ultimately, do you as a board believe that this is in the best interest of the community and the kids?
All right, and my last question then is to clarify the cure and correct concept, which I understand we're allowed to do pursuant to code.
Sure.
And in the process, do we technically then deem the contract void, should we decide to do that, and then make the subsequent decision to then take a subsequent vote on whether to then adopt or not adopt the following contract? Is that the appropriate procedure on the cure and correct?
So let me take you through the cure and correct. It's rather a more recent phenomenon because public agencies became embroiled in all kinds of litigation over arguments that the Brown Act wasn't complied with. So the legislature beginning to realize that mistakes happen without intent, and so the organization should be able to cure and correct. As I understand it, there was a request to cure and correct. So under the new protocol, relatively new protocol, I think in terms of legal life, it is a rather new body of law, but it permits you the opportunity to have a do-over, for lack of a better description. I believe that it would be most prudent for you to take the position that effectively as a result of the concerns of the public, that the contract, if it were to be approved today, it would be approved from today forward. So you give due recognition to the concern that was expressed by the public, and you take whatever action you take today. So effectively, as Ms. Schreiber was describing it, it is effectively a void, and then take action. It's not two separate actions, but you can certainly put your motion, make your motion on that.
With the caveat that upon the motion, upon the vote, that the previous contract would be void.
It depends upon the language of the motion. I recommend to you that you have a language that indicates in recognition of the concern of members of the public, the contract would not be effective from the date originally taken action on December 13th, but rather, if you so desire, and that is the vote of the majority, that it would be effective as of today's date.
Mr. Chinoff, the contract before us today has a different time frame, different scope of work, different dollar amount, with the same LLC. So what of this contract on December 13th that was approved unanimously by this board, doesn't appear to be on the agenda to bring that back, along with the other, I believe it was 13 items that were voted on in one motion of this board at that time. So can you just, it seems like that's a separate contract with a separate amount, separate time frame, everything else. So that one would seem needing to be void at this point.
So I want to make sure that I understand your question, because it's an excellent question. So it's my impression from the agenda item that it involves the contract of Alphabet Soup. There was a request to cure and correct, so you're going through the cure and correction protocol now. Am I to understand that the contract is not part of this agenda? Is that
The contract voted on December 13th, again, described a different scope of work, different time frame, and a different amount, with the same LLC. So this contract, in those ways, at least, is different than the one we approved.
Sure, I think it's important that you know what you're voting on, absolutely, I think that's critical. If it's the same organization, if there's a different scope of work, I think it's important that staff explain that. If the money is different in any way, form, or fashion, I think that it be explained. But the public was certainly put on notice that this issue was coming before them.
The approval of this contract before us today.
Yes.
Yeah, so my question is, how do we avoid the other contract?
By board action today. It would be my recommendation that part of any board action include a recognition that, because of the concern expressed by the public as the action taken on December 13th, the board is voiding that action taken on December 13th and now taking action.
And if we voted in one vote on 14 consultant agreements in that December 13th meeting, do those?
It's a different vote, if that's what you're asking. It's a different vote.
A different vote?
Yeah.
How?
How? Because it's being brought back to you before the public. You're entitled to your deliberative thoughts and analysis, right, today.
It's being brought back, meaning?
The contract.
What contract?
Contract with Alphabet Soup.
Which one?
Whatever contract has come today, whatever the term is, whatever the financial amount is. I don't have the contract with me. Perhaps the superintendent can explain if there's any difference, or Karen can explain.
Is this the contract we want the board to approve today? I'm asking Karen, this is.
Yes, and the change, I know you mentioned the change in the amount and dates of service. Perhaps it's my fault. This was coming as an item today, so I adjusted the timeline to today.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't go back to the last board meeting, knowing that this was going to be an action item. I wrote it for service today, pending approval for service tomorrow, and adjusted the timelines on the contract, the amount of the contract, and there was, I was asked for more clarity around what type of work, more specificity, that was added to the contract. So all the feedback I received from the last item, those were the updates I made to the current item that's attached today.
Well, telepathically, apparently, we were on the same page.
Well, that's very reassuring, thank you.
So Karen, so is there a difference between contracts that Anthony is alluding to?
Time frame, because the last one would have started earlier, so I wrote the contract for today with a start date of tomorrow if it were approved. I adjusted those weeks and time as I previously explained, with the estimate of hours per week, and I added more specificity to the scope of work around FACE, CEI, presentation literacy, TEDx, and World of Work.
Any other questions that I may answer?
I guess it would be a question for the board since you haven't seen both agreements, so.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Other questions from the board? Johnny, no, Joe, you Awesome.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'm no contract specialist. I like to sing to kindergartners and play my guitar. That's about as much as I know. So my contract expertise is very limited. Perhaps this should shed light as to how I could even increase my knowledge in contracts. But on this contract that we have for Alphabet Soup, I'm grateful that Mike Serban was able to present the family and community engagement, but it appears that, as you mentioned, there's a few more areas where Alphabet Soup would be able to enhance the work, progress the work, or make it stronger. So we have Beable, the World of Work, TEDx, the advocacy work for Cajon Valley, and continuity of the district-wide programs. Here at the bottom, at least on just the cover sheet of the item, it says compensation terms is 24 weeks times 30 hours per week at $70 per hour, not to exceed $50,000, $50,400. When you say not to exceed, that means what?
When we work with any contractor, we have an agreement. I could ask for 100 hours a month and they can say, I can offer you 50 based on my ability to perform. So that's agreed upon hours. It's up to, so when we ask for work, if we wanted assistance with TEDx in our event, the contractor would invoice us for the hours, we look at the work, and then I or whoever oversees that contract would approve, review and approve hours that were submitted. It cannot, from the time period, this one ends on June 30th this year, it cannot exceed cumulatively the hours in the not to exceed.
Okay, so that's the exceeding piece. It doesn't mean that that's a guarantee of what they're going to be.
You have to submit an invoice to us. We review the invoice. The person most directly connected to the work reviews the services, and then we don't pay until someone signs off on the services that were provided.
Okay, can you please explain the unique expertise that Tamara may have in any one of these other characters, be it Beable or TEDx? Is there any expertise that she can execute other than what we can do as board members?
I think it goes back to the same tenets that Mike talked about: historical knowledge, expertise, involvement in the programs in Cajon Valley. I'll start with TEDx. TEDx happened because of Tamara and David. The first year TEDx began, we didn't really know what we were doing. We didn't have staff that could support it. Tamara came and worked with another board member, Suzanne Mullins, at the time, got the